Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. You're in the How to Plant Safely in Drought-Tolerant Landscapes seminar. We've created a website that details nearly 100 plant species that have some sort of safety concern. And we're not going to go over all of them today. That would take way too long. But we're going to go over a couple of them and try and show you how this website works and how some of these plants can be harmful and ways for you to mitigate the risk of those harms. So I'm going to turn this over now to Carolyn Martus. She's our staff research associate in the San Diego office, and she worked very, very hard on the website. So Carolyn, please take it away.
Thanks, Chris. So we're going to take a look at the website that we built, and here is a screenshot of the homepage. Not sure how well you can see this, but you can always take a look at it later. It has a detailed safety guide that goes into a little bit more detail about some of the things that Chris talked about. So you shouldn't feel the need to write everything down that we're saying, because everything that we're saying here is on the website. Next to the safety guide, we have a list of scientific names. And if you don't know the scientific name of a particular plant, you can look up the common name, or you can pull up the common name list and then look for it. And then also next to each name, there's a thumbnail photo of the plant. So maybe you don't even know the name of the plant, but you know what it looks like. You can scroll through the pictures and try to find what you're looking for. And then we also have shared with you all of our resources that we've gathered during the project. And also under the resources tab is where you can find a PDF of the brochure and the bookmark that you can print at home in case you're not able to pick up a hard copy. And under the resources guide is going to be a list of websites, additional materials that you might want to look at. And the website is over here if you need it. And this is the QR code if you want to quickly take a picture of that. So this is the home page. And if we were to scroll down, this is what we would see. You have the option of clicking on scientific names here, and the scientific names will pull up, or the common names, or you could do it at the top bar. So we have it in multiple places so that hopefully you'll find it, trying to make it as easy as we can for everybody. And I just want to mention that the plants that we've listed on this website, we did do a lot of internet research, but also looking at published articles, and actually, tried to vet every plant before we actually put it on our list. And we tried to focus on common drought-tolerant plants that are available for sale in your nursery. So that's where we came up with the 100 species, and we also worked closely with the San Diego County Master Gardeners to help us develop the website and make sure we put together some really good resources for everybody. So if you wanted to click on scientific names, it would pull up this page, and here you can see the list of scientific names, and there's a thumbnail photo. So maybe if you don't know the name, you know the picture. And a couple of quick things I want to point out is that in this case here, you see we have Achillea millefolium, which is the common yarrow that we plant in our gardens. But if you go down, you'll see we just have Agave spa, Agave SPP. Well, what does that mean? Well, we didn't list every species of agave on this website because they all have the same harmful characteristics. They all have spines, except for one, and they all produce toxic sap. So rather than list each agave, we just have Agave spa, and the plant profile covers all of the agaves in the genus with one exception, and that's noted on the plant profile. So that's the list of scientific names, and this is a screenshot, but if you scroll down, it starts at A and it goes all the way down to, I believe Wisteria is the last one. And then the common names is also A to Z, and it has, if the plant is known by several common names, we've tried to list as many of the common names that we can, but we can only alphabetize it one way. We're sort of limited in that fashion. But you'll see here for African lily, there's two common names, either African lily or lily of the Nile, but it's alphabetized under A. So that's kind of how that works. And so in the common names, if we were to scroll down, and let's, for looking through the website, we're going to pull up the plant profile for Firesticks. So if we scroll down, we find Firesticks listed as Firesticks, pencil cactus, sticks on fire, or milkbush. Those are some of the more common names that we found. And if we were to click on Firesticks, it would open up to the species profile for Firesticks. You have the scientific name at the top, the common names that it's known by, Firesticks, sticks on fire, and the list goes on. More than one photo of the plant to help you learn to identify it. And then we have the information broken down into three columns, whether or not the plant has thorns or spines. And in this case, the answer is no. How is this plant unsafe? And then we have the how do you plant this plant safely? So we give you some suggestions if you want to do that. So in the case of Firesticks, how is this plant unsafe? And I'm just going to read to you. So sap in any form, including dried sap, is irritating and can be toxic if one gets it on exposed skin, such as bare hands or in your eyes. And also note that dried sap could be on the plant at any time and dries clear and you can't see it. And so that sounds like a lot to handle. And some of you may choose not to plant it, but there are ways that you can plant it and be safe. And I'm going to briefly just tell you what we have on our website. So never touch this plant with bare hands. Always wear gloves when handling this plant and wash your hands thoroughly with soap after any contact with this plant. Children and pets should not play near this plant. Wear protective clothing when working with this plant. Note how large it grows, 40 feet tall by 10 feet wide in frost-free areas, and plant it away from sidewalks and paths. If you are going to plant this in the plant, if you are going to plant this plant, plant it in the ground rather than a pot because it quickly outgrows the pot. Once planted in the ground, consider completely removing the plant every 3 years and starting over with a cutting because it will fill out its space and becomes difficult to prune as it gets large. So that may seem like a lot of work, but that's generally what you should do. Always use proper pruning techniques and prune evenly, starting at the bottom and working your way up towards the top so the toxic sap does not rain down on you as you are pruning. And do not prune it into a tree. If you prune this plant into a tree, it will fall over. It has, as we keep saying, it has toxic sap in it, which makes the plant, so if you prune it into a tree, it will become unbalanced and it will fall over. So those are some simple steps you can take if you decide to plant it, and that's how you can be safe with it. So now we're gonna transition out of the website. Sorry about that. So a lot of this may seem somewhat overwhelming to some people, especially to novice gardeners that may be in on this presentation. Plants, they come with labels. When you buy them in the nursery, in the sense that they come with a label that tells you what the scientific name and what the common name is, but they generally don't come with warning labels, except for, I've only ever seen labels on two kinds of plants, and I have them pictured here. One is oleander, and the other one is the sago palms. In the case of oleander, it's toxic if you eat it, and the clippings are toxic. You don't want to use it in your barbecue or in your campfire. You don't want to compost it. You always want to dispose of it if you're pruning it. In the case of sago palm, it's been in the news recently because dogs like to chew on it and it's toxic. But my point is that they don't come with warning labels. So what are you supposed to do as the consumer if you're putting you want to garden and you want to garden safely? Never buy a plant from a nursery that doesn't have a label on it. And you can simply Google the scientific name of the plant and the words poisonous or toxic, and that should yield a fairly reliable search. If the plant is poisonous, there should be some information available on it. There's also so if you're that's for people that are just starting out. But if you already have a bunch of plants in your yard and you have no idea what they are and you want to find out if they're toxic or not, there are many apps where all you need is a photo of the plant, and you can try to find out the name of the plant. So you're sort of working your way backwards. Take a picture of the plant, use one of these apps, and then find out whether or not it's toxic or not toxic, and try to figure out if you can garden safely with it or not. So some more information to help you keep safe, and we're going to highlight some of the plants that are on their website. So I tried to think of it in 3 ways if you're thinking about toxic or poisonous plants. Or some plants can generally be toxic in 3 different ways. They're toxic if you eat them. Some plants contain toxic sap, and a simple way to be safe is to wear gloves. And the third way that plants can be that can cause injury or harm is that they have thorns or spines, or that they can cause skin irritation or dermatitis. So 3 ways generally that plants can be unsafe or harmful, but there's 3 simple ways that, or maybe not so simple. There's 3 ways that you can be safe. And we're going to talk about plants that are in each of these 3 different categories. So some plants that are toxic that you don't want to eat, that you might commonly have in your garden, but you can be safe with them. We have milkweed, sago palm, nightshade, and there's lots of different species of nightshade, and mock orange. And I'm going to talk about each one of these plants briefly. So milkweed. Milkweed can be poisonous if you ingest it, but it's generally only a problem for livestock. If they eat it in large quantities, they can be sick. However, you don't want your children or your pets eating it. But it's important to point out that our milkweed species, especially our local species, the narrow-leaf milkweed, is very important to monarch butterflies. So we don't want people to stop gardening with milkweed because we want to see lots of monarchs. So we just need to supervise our children and pets, and it does have a sap that can be irritating to some people. So if you are pruning your milkweed plant, you generally want to wash your hands afterwards and don't touch your eyes. If you plant the native species of milkweed, the narrowleaf milkweed, it doesn't grow as fast as the tropical one, and so you generally never need to prune the native species. But if you plant the tropical milkweed, it grows. If you don't have it covered in monarch caterpillars, it does sometimes need to be pruned regularly. Sago palms, we talked about that one a little bit. It's been in the news recently because a lot of dogs, some dogs seem to be attracted to the cones of the species. But what I want to point out to this one is that sago palm is not actually a palm, it's a cycad. It's more closely related to pine trees. And for those of you who are new to gardening, you may think you have a sago palm in your yard, but you might want to double check. You could, because there are some dwarf palm trees that look a lot like sago palms. So if you do have sago palm and you're thinking about taking it out, you might want to just make sure you have it before you decide to get rid of it. It also has, the tips of the leaves are also very pointy, and this plant is often planted too close to the sidewalk or walkway. Nightshades, the picture that we have here is the common landscaped nightshade, the potato vine. You see this in a lot of people's gardens, but it's important to point out that a lot of our, a lot of our vegetables are in the nightshade family. So your tomatoes, potatoes, chilies, and your peppers. And we certainly, we have a talk this weekend on how to plant your salsa garden, which is a lot of your plants in the nightshade family. So supervising your children and pets, and make sure that you don't eat the leaves, stems, or unripe fruits of your garden nightshades. And those are some things that you can do. And in the last plant for this category, Pittosporum or mock orange is a common landscape shrub, and the entire plant is toxic if you ingest it. So again, supervising your children and pets, planting these plants in areas where they can be supervised. Those are just some of the simple things you can do. Those are the 4 plants. I'm going to keep moving through this because we're getting close to time. So some plants, as we said before, they can contain a toxic sap, and it can be varying levels from sap that is mildly irritating. In the case of jade, it might only cause problems for people who have sensitive skin, all the way up to the case of Firesticks, and most Euphorbias, or all Euphorbias, contain varying levels of toxic sap. And we're going to talk about these 3 plants here briefly, and I'll show you their species profile pages from our websites. So in the case of jade, like I said, the sap may be irritating to some people. It's also mildly poisonous if ingested, but again, supervise kids and pets. In the case of fig tree or ficus, so in this particular case, we're talking about the entire ficus genus, and there are, I don't even know how many species of ficus we use in landscaping. And then there is the edible fig, the Ficus carica, that many people grow in their garden for the fabulous fruit. It does have a toxic sap, and so you want to just make sure that you're only eating the ripe fruit, you're not eating the unripe fruit, and you're not eating the leaves. And if you have sensitive skin, and even if you don't have sensitive skin, the first time you prune the tree, you may want to wear your protective equipment. And of course, our Firesticks has toxic sap. It has more toxic sap than ficus and jade plant. And as we talked about earlier, if you simply do not touch this plant with your bare hands and plant it in places where it can be seen and not touched, you can avoid your injury. But in the case of Firesticks, I wanted to, I have some pictures on this next slide. So I wanted to show you pictures of what the toxic sap actually looks like. So, and you can, if you're looking at this on your phone, you won't be able to see it. But if you can see my cursor here, this is the dried sap on this plant. It's just this thin white line. So that's kind of what it looks like. And then over here, these are some branches that have just been pruned. And I didn't use pruners to prune this plant. I just pulled them off with my gloved hands. And these white, this white right here is the actual toxic sap coming out of the plant. And then it runs down the stem over here. So that's what it looks like. Again, just be careful and wear gloves, eye protection as well for some of the plants. And the last way that plants can cause problems is what I refer to as like the physical injury. So they have thorns or spines, or they can cause irritation, like dermatitis. And these are some of the plants that I'm going to briefly go over that are featured on our website. So agaves, the spines are on most agaves are fairly obvious. However, they do also contain a toxic sap. And the one species of agave that has a softer edge is the Foxtail Agave, or the Agave attenuata. it's just a bit friendlier looking of the plant. I don't have a picture of it here. I should put a picture on our website, but you might want to check out the Foxtail Agave. This is another species of Euphorbia. It's related to the Firesticks, the crown of thorns, Euphorbias. So it has, it does have the sap, but this particular one has thorns, and the thorns are not obvious. They are, I don't know if you can even see them in this picture, but they're underneath the flowers. So you wouldn't want to have this one too close to your sidewalk and have a child be attracted to the red flowers and then decide to go pick them only to find out that there's spines underneath. Bougainvillea, lots of people have Bougainvillea. Bougainvillea have thorns that are not so obvious. If you're going to be pruning this plant, you want to make sure that you're armored up so that you don't hurt yourself. Many of the spines on the cactus, they have obvious spines, and then they also have not so obvious spines that are called glaucids. And there's a high resolution photograph here of what some of the glaucids look like, which is these barbs is why when you get, if you brush up against cactus and you get the glaucids embedded in your skin, they are impossible to remove because the glaucids just pretty much lock them in there. And it's generally kids and pets that get themselves into trouble with the cactus. Pepper trees, the leaves can cause mild dermatitis. Beautiful kangaroo paw, the flowers have teeny tiny little hairs which can be irritating to the skin and eyes. And just to close this section, so there's three main ways that plants can be toxic. However, some plants can be toxic in more than one way. Like we talked about, agaves have spines and toxic sap. Some euphorbias have spines, but most of them have varying levels of toxic saps. And in the case of solanums or nightshades, our potatoes and things like that, they all have varying levels of a poison called solanine. And some of the solanums have spines. And again, I hope that this information wasn't too overwhelming, but I want to mention that a great place, the Water Conservation Garden, that's why I put this picture here at the end of the slide, and I put the location and the phone number, has some excellent demonstration gardens with well-spaced plants and examples of safe drought-tolerant landscapes where plants can be seen and not touched. Overall, it's an excellent place to see some of the principles that we talked about today in practice. In this photo right here, the Firesticks are at the back of the landscape. You can't see the walkway, but even the agaves are not encroaching on the walkway. The agaves and the aloes, they're at the front of the plant. And I do believe the Water Conservation Garden is going to be opening up pretty soon. I encourage you to check it out. And just a quick, for those of you who may have joined the presentation late, I just want to reiterate that the Cooperative Extension presents this presentation with references to poisonous and toxic plants, but we are not advocating for the use of poisonous and toxic plants in your landscape. This presentation is for informational purposes only, not as a guide for diagnostics or home treatment. Under no circumstances is this presentation meant to replace the advice of a qualified poison specialist or physician. It is noted here that our information is not a complete database of all plants that are poisonous, and it is very important to remember that just because a plant is absent from a poisonous plant list does not necessarily mean that the plant is not in some way poisonous. And with that, I would like to close by saying thank you to the County of San Diego for funding this important work. We would also like to thank the many staff members of the UCCE San Diego office that have assisted us with this project. We would like to especially thank the many San Diego master gardeners who contributed time, energy, reviewing data, conducting internet research, sharing knowledge, and taking photos to help us bring this project to you, the public. The QR code on this slide will take you directly to the San Diego Master Gardener website. And I would like to just point out a new feature on their website titled Let's Grow Together San Diego, a stay-at-home gardening resource. You should check it out. And at this time, Erin Spaniel is going to read the questions from the chat, and either Chris, McDonald, or I will answer them to the best of our ability. Also in the chat box, you will find a link to the post-workshop survey, which will also be emailed to you, so you have 2 opportunities to take the survey. Or in case you miss it in the chat box, it'll be emailed to you. We ask that you take the time to fill this out, as it helps us plan programs that are helpful to the public. Do you have comments about today's presentation? Would you like to hear about something else? Please let us know. And with that, I will turn it over to Erin.
Thank you, Carolyn. Let me see, we've got a couple more questions coming in right now. Let me make sure I capture them. So one of our questions was from Mary, and it was referring to the website of the listing of plants. And Mary asks, is this a Southern California list, or is it applicable to the whole state?
It is focused on San Diego County. We did this project here in San Diego County, mostly visiting nurseries that are here in San Diego County. This information could be useful to other parts of California. However, we may have missed some of the more common plants that are planted in other parts of the state because the climate is slightly different.
Perfect. Okay, another question from Jody. She asks, does the California Poison Control Hotline answer questions related to plant poisoning of pets? If not, do you have another recommended hotline? Obviously, the first choice would be a vet, but what if the office hours are closed?
That's a great question. I think that I have a link on our, I believe that I think that the ASPCA runs one, although I'm not sure. Chris, do you know?
The ASPCA has a website. I definitely know the ASPCA has a website that lists hundreds of plants that are toxic to dogs and cats. And some of those plants are like only toxic to cats, but not dogs, or vice versa. So they have a very comprehensive guide to that. Not all of those are drought tolerant plants. So there's many, many plants that are on that list that are in Eastern North America that we'd never see here. So that's one resource. I don't know if they have a hotline or not. And I'm not 100% sure if the poison control hotline will answer questions about pets. There are some veterinary hospitals that are open 24 hours. So there's also that option as well.
Perfect, thanks, Chris. Let's see here. Susan asks, if we want to remove any of these plants, how do we properly dispose of them? I understand that we can't put Euphorbias into green bins.
I think you can put Euphorbias into green bins. I think it's the oleanders that you don't want, but the best thing to do would be to contact whether you have EDCO or waste management. Usually you can just call their customer service hotline and ask them, are there what plants do they not want in their green waste? And then if you can't put them in the green waste, you're gonna have to put them in the trash can. But I would direct you to your, whoever services the trash for your area of San Diego.
Yeah, different trash companies will have different rules depending on where they send their green waste, or whether they send, and where they send their garbage.
Because some of them will take cactus and some of them won't, and some of them will take palm clippings and some of them won't. There's some variability.
Perfect. Okay, one of our last questions was from Carol, and she noted that she saw Firesticks planted along public walkways, particularly during an outdoor mall. and she was surprised at the level where small children could grab the plants. Are there any recommendations on how to contact the owner of the property? Should she contact this owner, or what do you recommend?
I would start out with just a short email with a "Did you know?" and be more educational, and provide a link to our website. And hopefully, because it's coming from the Cooperative Extension, they'll quickly realize it. And I would imagine that they would want to reduce their liability and remove the plants. They were probably completely unaware. I mean, Firesticks is a very popular plant because it grows fast, it requires little water, and it's beautiful, but planted in the wrong place, it quickly becomes a problem. So I think a short email to a property manager with a link to our website, and once we can get you some brochures, you just drop them off. I think that people will quickly change their mind.
Yes, and we also have the bookmark that we have on the website, but also was in this presentation, highlights Firesticks. So you could always get the bookmark and hand that out in person as well. So there's kind of 3 ways you can go about this: the bookmark, the brochure, and the website.
Awesome, thank you, Chris. That concludes the questions that were in the chat box today.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and thanks for sticking with us. I hope you learned something today. Please fill out the post-workshop survey. That really helps us to figure out how well we did with this seminar, as well as helping out with any future seminars that we have. Please check out our website for the Plant Safely guide, as well as for our Cooperative Extension website in San Diego. And thank you all for being here. And thank you, Carolyn, for doing all of this amazing work. And thanks, Aaron and Rob, as well. If there's any last-minute questions, feel free to email us, or email us if you want some of the brochures or bookmarks. Thank you very much.